If you're tired of using Tether on Legend Onslaught and want to switch things up, this is one of the best hunter builds to lock down entire areas. With one grenade, you can pretty much block an entire spawn of enemies off and even reduce their movement speed so they can't get towards the ADU. Alongside its crowd control capabilities, it will also have a ton of ad clear and a couple different ways that it can support your team. So without further ado, let's jump into one of my all-time favorite hunter builds. Alright, starting off with our exotic, we're going to be running Renewal Grasps. This has the exotic perk Depths of Duskfield. Your Duskfield grenades have a much larger effect radius. Allies inside the Duskfield take reduced damage and targets inside the area deal reduced damage. So this exotic is going to do three different things. One, it's going to increase the radius of the Duskfield, which is going to make it way easier to lock down areas. But the other benefits of this is that if your allies are inside the Duskfield, they're going to be granted 25% damage reduction, and the enemies inside the Duskfield are going to be doing 50% reduced damage. So not only can you use this exotic to lock down a group of enemies, you can also throw this on the ground near you and your teammates, and you're going to be pretty much unkillable. Enemies inside the Duskfield are doing reduced damage, they are slowed and eventually will be frozen, and you also are taking reduced damage. These are pretty much the unkillable Stasis exotic, and it pairs extremely well with our subclass. And taking a look at our subclass, first off, we're going to be running Touch of Winter. This is going to buff all our grenades, but as you see, Duskfield grenade increases the slow field size and creates a small stasis shard on impact. So Touch of Winter will actually stack with Renewal Grasp. So now you have two different things increasing the size of your Duskfield grenade. And once again, the bigger this grenade is, the easier it is to lock down areas and also give you the survivability benefits for you and your team. And another way you're going to be able to help your team out is with the aspect Grim Harvest. So this is defeating slowed or frozen combatants create stasis shards. These shards grant melee energy when picked up by you and your allies. So now every single enemy that you are slowing are going to create stasis shards. As it said, whenever you or your allies pick them up, you will be granted melee energy. Now this is nice to refill your own withering blades, but if you have a teammate that is playing into a melee based build, say something like a Strand Titan or just having an arcane needle on the warlock, they will be able to refill those abilities a lot faster, so they can always take more advantage of their build. And then the other benefit of Grim Harvest is the fact that it will give you 3 fragment slots. So between Grim Harvest and Touch of Winter, you're going to have 5 fragment slots, and all of these play into the build extremely well. First off, we have Whisper of Fissures. Increases the damage and size of the burst of stasis when you destroy a stasis crystal or a frozen target. So now every single frozen enemy or stasis crystal you spawn will have a bigger AoE radius and do more damage. You're going to be able to make stasis crystals from your weapons, your artifact, and even Touch of Winter. So whenever you throw a Duskfield grenade, a crystal will spawn in the middle of that Duskfield. Now to help kill those frozen targets and crystals, we're also going to be taking Whisper of Rending. So primary ammo weapons do increase damage to stasis crystals and frozen targets. Now when you have a ton of enemies frozen, you're going to be doing 50% more damage to them with your primary weapon, and you will also be doing 100% more damage to stasis crystals, and this normally allows most weapons to be able to one-shot a stasis crystal. Shooting the stasis crystals aren't only going to be beneficial for ad clear, but we're also going to be taking Whisper of Shards. So shattering a stasis crystal temporarily boosts your grenade recharge rate. Shattering additional stasis crystals increase the duration of this benefit. So now every single time we destroy a stasis crystal, we are granted 500% ability based grenade regen. This will last for 6 seconds, but additional stasis crystals you destroy will add time to this timer, and the max you can get is 11 seconds. With the amount of stasis crystals you can make with this build, you're going to have this fragment up pretty much all the time. And then if ad clear and ability regen wasn't enough for your crystals, we're going to have another way to take advantage of them, and that is Whisper of Chains. So while you're near frozen targets or a friendly stasis crystal, you take reduced damage from targets. Since you've already seen how we're going to freeze everything on the battlefield, this is going to be proc pretty much all the time, but you can now also stand near a stasis crystal to further increase your damage reduction. A really cool synergy is with Whisper of Chains paired with Renewal Grasp. When you throw the Duskfield on the ground, you'll make a stasis crystal to proc Whisper of Chains, and while you're in the Renewal Grasp Duskfield, you're also taking reduced damage. If enemies are inside the Duskfield as well, they are doing reduced damage, and with all that stacked on top of each other, you are pretty much unkillable. So it becomes a fun mini game of trying to keep one crystal alive so you can take reduced damage while also using the other ones for ad clear and constantly getting your grenade regen up. And remember, Whisper of Chains also works on frozen targets, so if there's no crystal around, definitely just be sure to stand near a frozen enemy and you will still get the damage reduction. Now the final fragment is going to be Whisper of Durance. So slow that you apply to targets last longer. For those abilities that linger, their duration will also increase. This is essentially going to be buffing the slow of your Duskfield, and it also makes your Duskfield last a little bit longer. Obviously, the longer the grenade lasts, or even the more you can throw, you're going to be able to lock down an area even more. So you want to have as much uptime on your grenade as possible, and this fragment allows for that. And then the final things to round out the build, I like to take Marksman Die Dodge because it has a lower cooldown. You don't really need Gambler's Dodge since you're going to refill your melee energy with Grim Harvest. And then also your Super Silence as well is very strong if there's ever a sticky situation. You can freeze everything and then have the Tornado just clear a bunch of enemies for you. Now, it doesn't end there. Some of the other ways we're going to be able to improve our stasis abilities is with Pillar of Ice. So whenever we defeat a frozen target, we'll make a stasis crystal. Since we're going to freeze targets all the time, we're making even more stasis crystals to proc everything that we already went over. But you also have Held the Storm. So shattering frozen targets and stasis crystals deals increased damage. Shattering stasis crystals releases shards of ice that damage and slow targets. So Held the Storm is now going to stack with Whisper of Fissures to cause those AoE frozen explosions to do more damage. And then if you destroy a stasis crystal, you will also release the ice shards that can slow enemies. Since there are going to be crystals everywhere with this build, you're going to be able to shoot these ice shards out at all times. And then for your weapons, I would highly recommend a stasis primary. With something like Wicked Implement, it does have Headstone with the catalyst, so you can make even more stasis crystals. But the more you shoot over and over again, you can slow and freeze targets, and picking up stasis shards will overflow the magazine. This synergizes extremely well with this build. But if you don't like Wicked Implement, you can also take something like Virgil's Curve, so you can make crystals with the bow. Even Cryosthesia could work super well, but I would definitely recommend the other two options before Cryosthesia. And if you just want a Headstone legendary weapon with something like Demolitionist, Unending Tempest is great, or even the new Trial Scout Rifle, because this will give you even more grenade energy alongside making Headstone crystals that can play into literally everything that we've already went over. But most of the time, I am normally running Wicked Implement. Since it is an exotic primary, it will do 40% more damage, and then pairing that with Whisper of Rending, this thing can absolutely just destroy frozen targets while also making you more crystals. And now for stat distribution, always go with 100 resilience. This will give you 30% damage reduction. This will stack with Renewal Grasp and Whisper of Chains, so again, you become pretty much unkillable. I would highly recommend 100 Discipline as well, so you can have a 45-second Duskfield grenade cooldown. Pairing that with everything else in the build, you're going to be able to spam your grenade over and over again. And then I would highly recommend going into mobility for your last stat, so you can get your dodge back a lot faster. Your dodge is going to play in some of your armor mods, and starting off with the first armor mods, let's take a look at Harmonic Siphon. So rapid stasis weapon found blows can create an orb of power. This is going to be nice because now whatever stasis weapon you choose, you can make orbs, and those orbs are going to provide a good amount of benefits for you. Next up is going to be heavy ammo fighter. So this will increase the amount of heavy ammo on kill. If you are running an exotic primary, this will proc more often, so something like Wicked Implement or Virgil's Curve. This just means you now have more heavy ammo, which is very, very nice. The next up is Dynamo. So reduce the super cooldown when you're using your class ability near targets. Since we're investing heavily into mobility to get our dodge back, we're going to always be able to use it, so we can always just have this passive super regen in the background, and this will give you around 2.5% of your super regen whenever you just use it in your enemy. Now for our gauntlets, I do like to take a harmonic loader so I can increase the reload speed of my stasis weapons. This doesn't matter as much if you're running Wicked Implement, but if you're running a different weapon, this is nice to have. But if you don't mind the longer reload speed, you can definitely swap this out for pretty much anything else. Now next up is going to be a momentum transfer and bolstering detonation. So with these two, whenever I cause damage with my grenade, I will be granted melee and class ability cooldown. Your Dustfield doesn't really do a lot of damage, but it does do damage, so you will proc these and you'll get 12% of both of those abilities back. And now for your chest piece, always go with resistant mods. Just be sure to swap these out for whatever content you're going into. And then for my boots, I do like to take a recuperation so I can replenish some health whenever I pick up an orb of power. Pairing that with better already, so my health starts to regen every time I pick up an orb of power. You're essentially going to get a huge bump of health, and then if you're not taking damage, you will just heal to full. And then finally, I like to take an innervation so I get grenade energy whenever I pick up an orb of power. This is going to give you 10% grenade energy per orb, so again, you can just spam Dustfields even more. And finally, for my cloak, I do like to take a bomber. This is going to give me 12% of my grenade energy whenever I use my class ability, so now I'm getting super energy alongside my grenade, providing me class ability energy and melee, and then I can use that class ability to further get grenade back. Now I also like to take powerful attractions, so whenever I use my class ability, I will pick up all the orbs around me. This is extremely strong with the hunter because you can spam your class ability all the time. Picking up all the orbs around you will proc all of your leg armor mods for more grenade cooldown and your survivability, so this is extremely beneficial to have on your cloak. Then finally, I like to take a proximity ward, so whenever I get a finisher, I will gain a powerful overshield. This is just nice to have in a sticky situation. If there is an enemy that you can finish, you become pretty much unkillable with this. But if you want to swap this out for anything else, maybe something like a distribution, you can absolutely do that as well. But now arguably the most important part of the build, the Transmog. I definitely tried to go for a very ice themed look. I took advantage of some of the Warlord's Ruin armor. I even have a green helmet because I thought it looked kind of cool, and I'm also running the Renewal Grass ornament. I actually think this turned out to look pretty sick, and if you want to make your hunter look like this, definitely be sure to copy it down. But alright, that is going to do it all for me. Let me know what you all think about the build in the comments below. I know Stasis is the weakest compared to a lot of other subclasses right now, but in Onslaught, you can take a lot of advantage of it it because you can just lock down an entire area. If there ever was a game mode where Stasis is extremely strong, it is for sure going to be Onslaught, and this will easily let you get through Legend so you don't have to run something like Tether. But hey, if that's your thing, let's be honest, Tether's still going to be a little better than this. But if you want to swap things up, have a little fun, this is definitely a build I would recommend you all give a shot. Anyways though, that's going to do it all for me. Good luck on your Legend Onslaught runs. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.